we've reached the southern end of Elliott Bay here, a little bit closer to the working waterfront of Seattle. First thing I always like to point out in this area, on the right or starboard side of the ship are some dry docks. This is the main dry dock location of the city of Seattle. Docks, we can see a U.S. Coast Guard ship here that is used as an icebreaker. That's the red colored ship here. In a moment, we'll pass the U.S. Coast Guard base located here in the Pacific Northwest. Right next to that, you'll see a gray colored vessel also in the dry dock. This is one of our Navy vessels over here. Dry docks are interesting. These buoys they're hollow structures that fill up with water in order to sink down into the water and then drain back out in order to lift vessels up from the water. There's two other really interesting vessels at dock today, or at port today. The first one that we can see is a Navy vessel with the number 102 at the front of it. This is the USS Sampson. Next to that, behind the structure that says Vigilant, is another Navy vessel with the number 100 at the front of it. That's the USS Kidd. Both of these are missile destroyers. The first vessel that I pointed out with the 102 in the front was actually just towed in yesterday.